So, welcome to the first Sitebulb live hangout. As I say, this is a little bit trial and error, so please bear with us on the technology issues. So, I'm Geoff, and I'm going to give you a quick run through what we're going to be talking about this evening. We've got a few different things coming up. So, first off, I'll go through all the different people we've got in here. We've got the Sitebulb team plus a couple of guests. Patrick's then got a demo to go through the new features. So we're going to spend 10 minutes going through them, and then a bit of a discussion on the background and some of the reasons for us putting them together. Then we're going to open it up for some wider questions. So we asked for people to submit them in advance. So we're going to try and see if we can answer some of them, or at least discuss them a little. And if anyone's got any questions along the way, please do ask them. If we can fit them in, we will. We're trying to keep things pretty informal, make it into a bit of a discussion. Looking to go to hour at the very most, but probably will wind things up at about 3/4 of an hour. On that note, I shall get going. So, first introductions. Myself, as I said, I'm Geoff. I do marketing at Sitebulb. Been doing SEO for a long time now, and I started doing marketing for Sitebulb start of the year. Got Gareth down the bottom right there, if he's in the right place. Gareth is founder and developer at Sitebulb, so if anything goes wrong or you want anything new, Gareth's the one that's dealing with that. Patrick up the top right there, so second founder of Sitebulb, and we tried to pin down what Gareth...
Well, no, Patrick definitely does. Second founder.
Co-founder.
Definitely second. Got that right.
We had this discussion last time as well. We don't know what Patrick does. He does a bit of everything. You'll probably know him for his award-winning release notes, where he just abuses our users. And joining us, thank you in advance, is Simon and Dan, who got here. So, very quick introduction. Simon is from the UK. An SEO technical consultant, much more technical than me, and I can probably say in confidence he's been around longer than me as well. Since the start of the SEO days, I would say.
Before.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it too much, but yeah. And then we've got Dan. So Dan, you probably have seen for in local SEO, but what you probably won't know so much of is his technical side, which we see a lot more of at Sitebulb. Very technical, over my head a lot of the time. So say hello, Dan.
Hey everyone. Sorry, I had to change my camera around because my 1-year-old destroyed my backlighting last night. So
it's a lot better now.
Yeah.
Cool. No more dungeon.
Right. So, you know who we all are now, so I'm going to pass you over to Patrick, who's going to give you a bit of an introduction to his demo.
Cool. So, in version 3.6, which is live on the site now already, as 3.6.3, we've brought in scheduling, which has been much requested over the years. And this allows you to set up audits to run at specific schedule points in the future, as well as setting recurring audits that can run automatically every day, week, or month. And this is beneficial for 3 main reasons. Some websites are so busy during the day that devs simply will not allow you to crawl at any other time. So being able to schedule an audit to start at 2 a.m. is super helpful from that perspective. The ability to set recurring audits also means that you can set Sitebulb to run automatically in the background so that the next time you need an audit, you can just go and grab the data whenever you want it. And then the third reason is that some websites change very regularly. So maybe they change every day or every week, and you need to be continuously running audits on that site so you can effectively have a real-time view of the changes as they happen. And this allows you to set Sitebulb up effectively as a monitoring tool. So we're about to show you a demo of how you access this stuff in the tool. And if you can just cue that up now, Geoff, and move across to screen share, we'll also mute all the mics. I'm going to show you how to set up scheduled audits in Sitebulb. So, starting from the audit setup page, choose all your normal selections. I'll just tick a couple and then scroll down to the bottom and you'll see the scheduling option. And so you need to tick to schedule the audit, and then you'll get two different options. You can either schedule once, which means that only one audit will be processed and it won't recur, or you can choose recurring, which will do every day, week or month, depending on what you choose. So I'll first show you the once option, and once you've chosen that, you need to then select the date you want it to run. So let's say I wanted it to run on Friday in the middle of the night, so I'll say at 11:30. And you can choose anything up to a 5-minute interval. And then once you've made your selection, then you just need to click Save Audit and it will save the schedule. So then the other option is to choose recurring. And once you've clicked this, you'll see there's a few more options. Firstly, you get to choose the recurrence interval. So I'll choose weekly for this one. And then you also need to choose whether you want to start the audit right now and then every week after that, or if you want to choose a specific date to start the first one and then every week after that. So with the first option, again, you would need to pick a time. So let's say you start it right now. So it's 3:38 now. So you can decide, right, I'll run my first audit now, but then I really want the weekly audit to run in the evenings. So I'm going to choose to run it at 10 o'clock. So then in a week today, it'll run at 10 o'clock. Then a week after that at 10 o'clock again, etc. The other option is to select an exact time and date for the first audit to run. So this means that the first audit won't run right away, and we can schedule this to run whenever we want. So we don't want the audit to run right now. Instead, we want it to start, say, on Wednesday at 10 a.m. And so with this setup, the audits will run at 10 a.m. every Wednesday, starting from May the 20th. And then once you've made all your selections here, you just click Save Audit. To view any scheduled website audits that you've already got set up, you will need to navigate to the Schedule tab. And here you will see all the scheduled audits along with their next run date. So this is the time and date of the next scheduled audit, which is displayed on the left here. And then the next column shows you the recurrence interval. Now, once simply means that you have a single scheduled audit which will not recur. And this will disappear from this list once the audit has been completed. And then these weekly and monthly ones, which will be in this list all the time, and they will update themselves. So when the next time it runs, this date will update to the next recurrence. And for any of these, you can click through to view your project. And if you've not got any audits that have actually run yet, you will see this message. But if you do have projects that have got some completed audits, you'll see the audits underneath. So you can jump into any of those audits if you want, or using the options at the top, you can go and edit your settings. So the way that the projects work is that if you go and edit the settings, then they will save to the project itself. And then the next recurring run will use the new settings that you've saved. So if we go ahead and hit edit settings here, we can see that we've got a couple of tick boxes checked. Now, if we just untick those boxes, and then if we save that, then on the next audit, it will run without those items being selected. Similarly, we can update the schedule. So we could change this one to be a daily, and if we wanted to, we could also change the date and time that it runs next. So we could also, if we want, change this one to run at 2 o'clock, starting from this Thursday. And then once we hit Save Changes, that will update on the project. And now you can see it's become a daily recurring audit. So in this way, you can control all of the settings for every audit that's run, and you can keep them up to date based on previous audits. So say you notice that it's crawled some URLs that you didn't want it to. After the audit, just come in here, edit the settings and add some URL exclusions. Then it won't crawl them next time. You can also simply cancel the schedule completely by just clicking this button. and you'll just see this message which says that it won't delete the project itself, so you'll keep all of your history, but what will happen is the schedule will be removed. And finally, with any of these audits, with scheduled ones or unscheduled ones, you can just go ahead and start a new audit whenever you want. And this is kind of an ad hoc audit to run right now. And so Sitebulb will do a pre-audit as normal, and it will allow you to run an audit whenever you want without affecting your regular schedule. So as you can see, we just came in here and unticked these boxes, and they've remained unticked because now these are like the new settings for this project. Once you've set up some scheduled audits, then these automatically run when the scheduled time rolls around. So if you happen to be using Sitebulb when a scheduled audit is due to start, it will just queue up and start running straight away. Now there are a couple of things that all scheduled audits are dependent upon in order to work properly. The first is that your computer is actually on when the audit is due to start, and the second is that Sitebulb is actually running when the audit is due to start. If either of these are not the case, then scheduled audits will not run on time. In order to mitigate these potential issues, there are some specific scheduling settings that you're able to adjust. You can find these settings by navigating to the Scheduled tab and then hit this button here to go to the scheduling settings. And these are specific settings to do with scheduling. So with any of these, if you're unsure what they mean, just hover over the question mark and you'll get a little explanation. And we've also got a link to a guide on the website which explains it all in a bit more detail. So we'll just run through what each of these means. Disable scheduling. So this might be useful if, for instance, you have a setup where you have 5 client sites that run weekly recurring audits. So on Monday you have your first one, and Tuesday a different site runs, and so every day a different client site is automatically running. Let's say at 10 AM every day. Then one week you realize you've got to do some online client training or something. So, every day you're going to do this client training and you don't want your computer bandwidth being used, or you don't want Sitebulb to be crawling in the background while you're trying to get on with other stuff. So in this instance, if you just tick disable scheduling, then all your normal recurring or scheduled audits won't go ahead until you untick it. So if you save this and then go back to the scheduled audits page, you'll see that they are currently disabled and won't run. So until you go back and enable them again, everything will just kind of pause. To get them all back on track, you just need to untick the box and save it again. Then the next option is load on startup. What this actually means is run in the background. So if you tick this and save it, then the next time you close Sitebulb down, the user interface will disappear, but Sitebulb will continue running in the background. In Windows, you'll be able to see a little Sitebulb logo in the system tray down in the bottom right, and on Mac, it'll be in the menu bar at the top right-hand corner of your screen. And basically what this means is that when you close Sitebulb down, the UI will not be showing, but the main Sitebulb application can sit there in the background, waiting for any scheduled audits. And then when it hits the start time for a scheduled audit, Sitebulb will fire up and run the audit in the background, as it normally would, but without the UI there to show you actually what's happening in terms of the audit progress. And with this option ticked, it also means that Sitebulb will load on startup. So when you restart your machine, Sitebulb will load up and just sit in the background, waiting for any scheduled audits to become due. If it does need to run a scheduled audit in the background, you'll get a little notification to say it's running and a notification when it's finished. So the point in this option is to help ensure that you don't miss any scheduled audits in situations where your computer is on, but you haven't actually opened Sitebulb up yet. Finally, we have the Run Missed Audits option, which is basically like holiday mode. So if you hover over the question mark, it will explain that by default, if you miss an audit for today's date, then Sitebulb will actually run it the next time you open the tool. But if you miss any audits for any other day, it would not run them. So if you had 3 audits that were scheduled to run in a week, but then you went on holiday for that week, then these would normally just be missed. However, if you have this option ticked, then the next time you open Sitebulb, it would queue up and run those 3 audits. To make the scheduling feature even more powerful, you can add a custom save location so that Sitebulb will automatically generate export files and save them into a custom folder as soon as the export finishes. To add a custom save location, go to the Advanced Settings and then select the Data tab. Here you'll see 2 options. The first one allows you to determine where the CSV or Excel exports will be saved, and the second one is where the audit project file will be saved. Now this feature becomes powerful when you choose your save location to be a shared folder, like on Dropbox or a shared network drive. But you can also use a local folder if you prefer. So if you click the blue button to choose your folder and select the folder you want the exports to save into, I've got one for exports on my local machine where I can save my files. And when this one finishes, the CSV and Excel exports that save in here will look like this. So you'll get all of your CSV files for all the hints and for things like the internal and international exports, which of course depends on which audit options you've selected in the first place. And there are also a few that are actually Excel spreadsheet files, such as the audit summary. And so all of this stuff just gets dumped in here automatically at the end of the audit. And then the second option here is for the audit project file, the SPP file, which is essentially like a share file and allows you to share your audit with other users so they can import the audit into their own machine. And that SPP file looks like this. So if you choose the same location for both the exports and the SPP file, like I have in this example, they will end up in the same folder once the audit is complete. Of course, you could just choose to use separate folders for each of them. With the SPP file, other Sitebulb users can import your audit as if they carried it out on their own machine. You can manually share audits in this way, but by adding a folder location into your project settings, this will generate automatically. So you could have one master machine in your office which runs all your audits and then saves off the SPP files into a cloud location that everyone on your team has access to. Then anyone on your team can just jump in and grab the audit and import it into their own version of Sitebulb as if they perform the audit on their own machine. This feature becomes super powerful when you pair it with scheduling. So you can have recurring projects that keep running in the background, and then they keep dumping the export files into a shared location that the whole team has access to. Now, one important thing to note about this specific setting is that it is set at a project level. So if you want to use it, you need to set it up for one project at a time. It won't automatically save this location for every single project. You have to go in and set up the save location each time. However, once it is added, the export files will automatically generate for all future audits that are run for this project.
Well, thank you, Patrick. Thanks for that demo. Hopefully everyone's got a bit better idea of what the new functionality does now. I think it's a pretty good run through of how to set it up. So now we're going to have a bit look at the background behind it, some of the challenges, and then we'll move on to how you might want to use it. So I'm just going to unmute everyone. And first off, got a bit of a question for Gareth and Patrick. So why did it take so long for us to get round to doing this?
It wasn't actually that he said it's only going to take 3 days. It was that when he actually built it, it took 3 days. So I guess we built it now because we had people coming to during the pandemic. We had people coming to us. Yeah, when everything kicked off at the start of it all, we had people coming to us basically signing up for Sitebulb, and whenever anyone signs up for Sitebulb, we ask them like, what made you come and give it a try? And they were saying to us that they were coming for some of the SaaS products, some of the more expensive SaaS products, and using Sitebulb instead. And we kind of thought to ourselves, well, is this an opportunity to catch up with some of those guys and really like what is the biggest thing that we've not got that they all have? And that was the ability to schedule and set recurring audits. So that was why we did it now, and why we sort of set our right, let's go and do it, or why I suppose why Gareth said, right, I'm going to sit down and just make this thing happen. The question about why did it take so long, and if you look in our sort of feature upvote page, it's something like 2 years at least since this thing's been requested, and loads of people have upvoted it. And the genuine reason why we didn't build it until now is because me and Gareth, who are sort of perfectionists, didn't like the idea that someone could set an audit for the middle of the night and turn the computer off, go home, and come in the next day and it wouldn't have run. And that was genuinely the reason why we didn't build it.
We couldn't come up with a robust way to without building a messaging system, which meant emailing people, keeping almost monitoring their machine to make sure whether it's on or not. Like if we knew you had an audit coming up to tomorrow morning at 9, we would have to monitor your machine to make sure it was on. If it wasn't on, we'd have to email you and let you know it's not on. I mean, it just gets like that's the degree we get to. We end up going, well, actually, it's going to be too complicated.
I can confirm we discussed that a lot of times.
But then when it came round to it, so we talked about it as potential. Is this an opportunity? And then 3 days later, Gareth says, "You know that thing we were talking about? Oh, well, I built it." And this was 8 weeks ago, I think, 9 weeks ago, like right at the beginning of lockdown almost. And we've had 2 months where it's been built and we haven't yet launched it because it was a bit more complicated than perhaps we first imagined, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, one of the ways that we did iron out a lot of them problems was getting people to test it. And one of the reasons that we brought Simon and Dan on this evening is they were involved in that at different stages. So that takes me on nicely to the next part where I have to ask, one, have you had a chance to try it out, both Simon and Dan, and how would you see it being used sort of real world? Simon first, have you had a chance to have a go at it?
Yeah, I've been running one audit in particular for 43 nights now. Actually a bit longer than that. I've just checked it for 43 versions of it there. Just worried about disk space. I'll be hiving that off somewhere on iCloud or something soon. And it's been very useful. It allows me to go back in and check what's happening on a daily basis. This happens to be a Wix site, so the number of pages change dramatically every night, which is a worry. It's never been the same, even though I know the sites. and I know that's not Sitebulb because I've got other things monitoring it as well. It's just haywire all the place, but it's really, really useful to have that. And I've run it on a couple of other sites as well on a different schedule that's going on nightly. I'm now running one on weekly basis as well. And as long as I remember to keep my machine on, sometimes we have power cuts and it goes off, or it crashes. I don't know until the morning, and it's not a problem at all. But now with the new run anything that's failed overnight, it's great. I mean, just get it going in the morning, and I'm not missing out.
I know you mentioned earlier, Dan, that you'd already been speaking to, I don't know whether it was a client or just someone you know about potential use cases. Is that right?
A prospect, yeah. Literally, my last call I had before getting on here was a call with a prospect, a large retailer in the U.S. And one of the core things that they wanted to talk about is ongoing monitoring of technical SEO issues, paying for expensive cloud monitoring platforms. Like Simon, we got to test the scheduler out at beta and have our Sitebulb instance in Amazon Web Services right now. And so the ability to just always have that going it's awesome. It's awesome. One of the things that we've thought about doing too is using it on the performance crawling side, right? Not just like the SEO auditing side, but the performance crawler to get like interval performance crawls, like the same time of day is a good example. So that variable is removed.
Yeah, I think it's probably not the typical use case for a lot of Sitebulb users having it on that sort of setup, but it definitely shows the scope there is for it.
But I mean, Simon's use case, right? Like everybody that's on something like WordPress that may push an update without them knowing about it, getting a crawl of that is for any of these managed hosting systems, for all SMBs or content platforms that use them is. I mean, you got to get some control when you don't control the infrastructure, right? Like when you don't control the pushes.
Yeah. I think that's definitely something. I've got a few later questions if we get time to come back to that really interesting side of it. I think for the moment we've got quite a few questions that people submitted, so I'm going to skip away from the new features and dive into some different stuff, go a bit wider. So I think the first one we've got is aimed at Patrick. Not that one. Yeah. Can you promise some bad language? I think this is aimed at your release notes.
My release notes. So, funny story actually. When we when we first started doing beta, this is halfway through 2017, I guess. Like, yeah, it must have been that time. And I first started writing the release notes, and I wrote them, and I said, Gareth, what do you think about this? And he was like, they're so boring, they're so dull. No one's ever going to want to read these. Because we had talked about it beforehand. We're like, well, let's try and make them transparent. Let's try and make them, because the release notes that you see so many people do, publish is just like bug fixes and improvements, performance enhancements, and they mean nothing to anybody. So we were like, well, let's try and make them at least tell you what's happening. And then he read them. He was like, they're just so boring. So I took that and run with it and started dressing them up a little bit. And they did this for a few weeks, and people seemed to like it. So I was like, okay, this is a good strategy. And I think back then, to try and get as many eyeballs on it, I would just email anybody who tried the product. I would email out these release notes to. And one person replied to the email and said, "You can't be putting fuck in a release note, and you can't be emailing me that." And I was like, and I felt bad about it. And I felt guilty. So in the next set of release notes, because this is in beta, we're just doing releases all the time. Every week we'd have one, at least one, if not more. And then I took them out, and then I got loads of complaints that I'd taken them out. So I had to go back to them, and I've never looked back since. So there you go. I've included your swear in the
secret to your success.
Secret, yeah. I mean, that question earlier. What does Patrick do? Well, it's basically that. Every release, Gareth spends 3 months or whatever it is honing the product, and I spend 3 months just honing those those notes.
No. So you've had your swear word now. We're done.
There you go.
Teaching Patrick
something.
A word of profanity was like an SEO highlight of my career. So I'm really glad I could make that contribution.
Oh yeah, what was that? Dickbag.
Dickbag, man. Dickbag.
Yeah.
That night is never going to leave me. That was a great night.
This is what Boston Tech SEO Boost last year, when we were all allowed to go out and talk to each other. Back then.
Yeah. It'll never happen again.
No, this will be it.
So, next question we've got. Can the schedule work with third-party services and local environment? So, I've got a little bit more context for this. So, they've given an example. I use an EC2 instance to do a lot of crawling. I'd love to have the scheduled crawl connected with my G Suite account so it can crawl automatically 24/7 and export crawl data to a specific folder in my G drive.
So just rewind the video to when Dan said that's exactly how he's got it set up.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah. It's surprising how many people are asking about them sort of instances. I still keep referring to them as being kind of edge cases, but they're not.
Not so.
There's a lot of people doing that sort of thing, and I think it does bridge that gap between desktop crawlers and cloud, and it gives a lot more functionality.
I mean,
We've also go on, Gareth.
Well, if you take Simon's example where he's sitting there doing it daily or weekly, he may not be wanting to share those audits, but he can back them up, use it as a backup tool, so he can store them on his iCloud, whichever service he wants to use, and he can merely just delete the old audits as and when he wants to, but they'll stay on the cloud. They're going to stay in there. Something like Dropbox, they'll just stay in there for however long you want. It's a neat way to keep a full year's history of all your audits. It's nothing worse than a client coming back to you and what happened 6 months ago. You can go back through all those audits and see where stuff started to happen or started to go wrong.
We literally had one of our customers, their office got burned down and they lost all their stuff, and if they had been saving stuff into the cloud, it would have all been there for them. So it's not unheard of. Another sort of a different way around to do this is some of our customers also have like what they often call a beast machine in their office, which is just used for crawling and just sits there like just absolutely mega machine with tons of memory, tons of cores, and they just let it go crawling all day long. And they don't turn that machine off ever, and it's just constantly crawling. So that would be a perfect setup for this, where you could, individual team members can have their own version of Sitebulb, but they can go and collect, particularly the big crawls, they can go and collect them from this save location that's actually been processed by the beast machine in the first place.
We're working on this right now, actually. If anybody wants to at me on Twitter, and Martin McDonald has one of these things too. If you want to add him on Twitter, happy to talk about it. Our person that would be doing it though just bought a house, so now he has to do that stuff before getting the internet fixed, before making sure he can keep that uptime before building the machine. So fun times.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, thanks for that, Dan.
You might get inundated now.
Yeah.
Happy to help, man. Happy to help. And then I'll tell them to go to vote on features that are good for this type of thing, and then I'll get all my features pushed.
Yeah. Now I see where you're coming at it from. Right. So the short answer to that question is yes, you can. So this is a little bit more off topic from the new releases. So this one from Geoff. This is more of a feature request than question, I think, but automate reporting on indexing. So Google Search Console and Google Analytics data in one report over time would be cool.
Okay, Gareth, do you want to take this one? You're the API man.
I know why you're delayed on this one.
Yeah, I was seeing who's going to chip in. Yeah, so the GA API is pretty open. You can query almost anything out of that. If you can see it if it's in a database, you can query it in some way, shape, or form. GSC is they're not very open with the data. You've got the Search Analytics API, but other than that, the data's kind of all behind the login, and getting access to the indexing report is just impossible. Not without having some sort of scraper that would log in as a user, start to scrape the pages and store it, and it just becomes really fragile. We know a few people doing it, but you've only got to build the system one day. Tomorrow, Google go and update the UI. Everything you've just built is gone. You've got to spend another day rebuilding it, see what's changed. It'd be interesting to see. We always say this. It'd be interesting to see what they do with the API, but they don't seem to have done anything other than the search analytics API at the moment. I don't think so. To answer the question, I don't think it's going to be possible yet. I don't think it's something that we'll be able to build, not without building something that's really convoluted and pretty fragile. We shall see what the next year or so brings. Who knows?
Yeah, we're in Google's hands to a degree with that stuff.
Yeah.
So another feature request one, fairly straightforward. This is a one from Nick that he actually submitted a long time ago as well in the feature requests. Is there any plans for a Linux version?
No.
The short answer for this one's no. And the long answer is we have a few people that ask for this, and not very many people that ask for this, and we have lots and lots and lots of really great feature ideas that everybody can benefit from, and so we only obviously have limited development time. We don't have millions and millions of engineers who can work on this stuff all the time, so we pick and choose the things that our users can get most value from, and a Linux version will benefit a few people, but most people won't see any benefit from, and it becomes an extra thing we have to build, get right, test, maintain. So it would affect our ability to build things quickly. It would have knock-on effects bigger than just building a Linux version. It would have knock-on effects going forward for everything we build. I mean, if it was up to us, we wouldn't even have a Mac version, to be honest. You can just throw Mac straight in the bin.
But just to add a little bit, wider context as well, it's something we've been spending a lot more time on, choosing which features that we do spend time on, because the implications in terms of support and maintenance and things like that are getting more and more the bigger our user base gets. So it's tricky to decide which ones, but we try to take a much more methodical try and pronounce that approach to it recently.
If you take the scheduler, on surface it's quite a simple feature. Like, it did take 3 days to build the mechanics of it. I spent another four weeks building the UI. We had to completely rebuild the UI and the way that projects are saved, audits are saved, and the ability to, like, we could have just probably another 2 days after the 3, and I could have just put another panel somewhere and you could just set up your tasks and it would have just run. But we tried to make it as part of the flow, so you're introduced to it while setting up the project, while setting up the audit. There are other tools where people they have some functionality and they just don't know it exists because it's hidden away. We want it to become part of people's workflow. I'm setting up an audit. Do I want to schedule this? Right, no, I don't want to schedule it yet. I'm just doing a URL discovery. Next time they come around, we've got the client now. Now let's set up our reoccurring audits. And that sort of stuff, backwards and forwards, come up with different ideas, takes time. And that's part of our picking process as well. And to echo what Patrick just said, the Linux version would end up just adding another, to be another. It's a whole new ball game. It would add another 2 or 3 times of what we do right now, and some of that is because we're not Linux users as well. So it's something to learn.
I know the next question kind of illustrates that a bit as well. Another feature that gets requested a lot, log analysis. So this one keeps coming back, keep getting hassled about it.
Yeah, I mean, this is the same, but not to the same degree. This is like a lesser version of Linux. The problem with log analysis is that people like to talk about it, but not that many people like to do it. So we could build it. We could spend a long time building it and getting it right and getting it in there. And then half our customers at least wouldn't try and do it. The other half would try and do it, and maybe half of them would be able to get the data off their clients. So perhaps it would be useful for some people, but it would be a big job for a small amount of people to benefit from. So it's kind of the same answer as Linux.
Yes, Dan.
So like, I think it's funny, right? Like, why do people want you to build a log file analyzer just to like ask that question, right? When that's something that, like Patrick is saying, if you can get is parsable and like you can deal with it in other ways versus like, custom search and extraction, which like getting out of a crawler is kind of like a core, like it's like a core functionality that everybody will benefit from in the Swiss Army knife. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, we have had many interesting conversations about log analyzing, and I mean, we shall see. It's certainly not something high up on the agenda at the moment.
The issue with all of this stuff is the concept behind new features and what you build next is simply an issue of prioritization, and to a lot of users, basically, will come at you going, everything is of equal top first, equal priority. I want a log analyzer, I want a scheduler, I want schema audits, I want, and the reality is we can't build everything all at once. And log analysis might, like where Linux is like almost definitely wouldn't do, log analysis is something that we might do at some point. But there are a bunch of other things that we think are going to offer way more value to way more people that we would choose to do before it.
That's why you guys are the best.
Got another one here, feature request that I put in at this point because I thought was quite an interesting follow-up to what we've just been talking about. So do we have an API? Which, no, we don't. Quite straightforward. Or can Sitebulb be set up on a server for concurrent site requests? So just to sort of give a little bit on my thinking of this, is one of the things that I know that Gareth and Patrick have been doing recently is rather than just producing an API like a lot of people have asked for, they spent a lot of time looking to see, well, what are people wanting an API for? What is the reason behind that request, and addressing that rather than just give them an API. Would I be right in saying that?
Yeah, I
You
mean,
are, yeah.
a lot of the things that people come to us with is they've sort of set up some heavily customized solution of their own, where a new client comes on board and you enter the website into Google Sheets, and that gets pulled via Zapier into Trello, and the task has been to invoice the client, and then a crawl gets scheduled, and there's all this sort of stuff that happens via APIs. It's very clever and it's efficient and all that sort of stuff, but again, it sort of works for these sort of customized solutions, which perhaps some agencies have got, or some like very tech savvy consultants might have these sort of setups to kind of save them time. But again, the bulk majority of our users don't need or use any of that stuff. They need, when they need to do an audit, they need a crawler to do their audit with. And Sitebulb we're building Sitebulb to be the best kind of auditing tool we can think of, not the most efficient part of a little workflow that already exists. And like, those things are cool, we're not sort of knocking that at all, but if the thing that they want is to schedule an audit or create an audit for some certain point in time, well, we'll build that instead. And that's what we did. So we've built that part. The thing with the concurrent site requests, well, the other thing we did in this release, if you've read the release notes, you'll see, is we made it faster. So that the things that you want this stuff for, we're building in a ways that's kind of usable for everybody, not just in these heavily customized setups.
So I purposefully put some of the more difficult questions a little bit earlier there, the ones that I knew weren't going to have yes answers to.
They're all no's.
yeah, that's pretty much it. I didn't want to avoid them. So here's a nice one to go in. Might be there already, but I'd like to see comparisons across two different crawls. Yes, you can do it. It's in there.
Yeah, so you can
straightforward.
Well, it's sort of I guess it's kind of a yes and a no. So if you've got a project set up, you can, and you've got more than one audit in there, you can compare between any two audits within that project. What you can't do at the moment is compare two completely different audits. So you can't compare an audit of site example.com and site xyz.com. You can't compare those two. However, we have a lot of that built already in a not unreleased version, so that will probably be available soon. So that bit's coming, and the first bit's already there.
So, and what about multiple comparisons across the same site?
So what do you mean, comparing 5 different audits?
Yeah.
I don't know. This is the first time anyone's asked for that, Simon.
That's why I'm here.
Right, so if you write a spec up for us, we'll take a look at it, Simon. All right.
I will do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dig in there.
I think there are some elements of that in some of the new features. Like, we do graph over time, so I could see that creeping in. Just need to push for it a little more.
Yeah, one of the things, just to sort of riff on that, one of the things which I'm interested in us building soon, again, how do we prioritize what? Partly it's the things that we want to build. One of the things which I'm really keen to see is the changes between two crawls. So yeah, my 404s have gone down, but are they the same 404s that have gone down, or have some new ones crept in? So the sort of new and lost type element. So typically with this sort of thing, the way that our development cycle works is, if I really want to do something, I just sort of chuck it at Gareth, and he locks himself in his cellar until he's figured it out, and then he comes out and gives it to me, and I go, no, that isn't really what I wanted. Can you do it again? And then he does it again, and sort of, luckily we're a remote team, because otherwise he would have throttled me by now.
Right.
We were doing social distancing before it was cool.
Yeah, now we're just limiting remote contact as well. Right, so we're getting close towards the end of our time, so I think I'm going to bring one more question in, something a bit wider. So I know we've got this as a feature, so I love your new feature for staging websites. bit more of an open question here. So what is the best way to use it in order to avoid issues when migrating the website? So before, during, and after migration. So this is something I'm pretty sure we could talk about for an hour in its own right, migrating websites. Patrick, I know you had some thoughts on this about different scenarios.
Yeah, I mean, so like every migration is not the same. There's a few different types, right? So you could have a migration where effectively the design is going to be the same, and the design of the new site is going to be completely different to the old site, but the structure is going to be basically the same. And so in that kind of situation, there's I guess possibly a little known feature in Sitebulb where you can change the project URL. So you could audit the current site right now, go and edit the project URL to devsite.com, whatever it is, then audit the dev site, and then do a comparison against the two. And in that case, you'd be looking for complete parity, wouldn't you? You know, if the content's not changing, but the aesthetics are, and you're looking for parity, that's the sort of thing that you'd want to do there. And like the feature we've added for staging websites is really just how do we tell Sitebulb to ignore all these sort of anti-indexing directives that we put in there, that, you know, the SEOs or devs like to go, let's have a no index on there, let's have a no follow on every single page, and it just completely ruins Sitebulb's reports. So the feature we've added is really just sort of minimizing that stuff and kind of going, well, let's just ignore that and pretend it isn't true. But so use that in combination with the changing of the URL in the project is the best way to do this. And like the other thing that you would need to do in some cases is in situations where you're changing a load of URLs. So if you've got a situation where you're not just changing the design, but you're also changing a load of the URLs, like where they actually live, and there's 301s that are going to be happening, there's old content that should now be 404ing, and all those sorts of things. Well, that's where you use the URL list mode. So you don't use the crawl structure at all. Instead, you kind of do as a separate project, right? Let's go and have a look. Are these things 301ing to the places they're supposed to 301 to? Are these things 404ing that should be 404ing? And that comes with that, obviously. You need to have an awareness of what things should do what. But doing it that way round for those parts of it allow you to kind of tick every part of the migration off. I don't know if Dan and Simon, I bet you've got more recent experience than me in this sort of thing.
But yeah, I had a migration at the beginning of the year with 7 sites into one main site, which was great, and without tools I couldn't have done it. Dan?
Yeah, same. Like we use it exactly like the way you described the flow for deployments from like a dev subdomain to a main subdomain, or any like consolidation of content over to a main, like a migration, like from like a domain to a subdomain on a different domain or a subfolder on a different domain, whatever it is, like that. It does great with that parity. The stuff that you're talking about the future differences, being able to see like the gained loss with it, like in our previous question, would be awesome with that stuff, because then you would see too the like change in the 404s, and also what you're saying with like, are they new 404s or are they the same 404s, right? So like that would be a really powerful addition to this.
Coming soon.
Another coming soon.
Yeah.
On that note, Dan and Simon, if pissing Gareth off wasn't an issue, is there one feature we could give you tomorrow? What would it be? Simon, you've got one on your mind, I can see there.
Well, yeah, I know it's been mentioned already, but schema, I think is a must these days, because there's so much of it going on, and it's more and more coming along as well. And auditing a site for schema is becoming critical, to be quite frank. And so that I would like to see, and I know that you've got some irons in that fire already.
That's lucky.
Yeah, got some irons in that fire. We have
not tomorrow though, I don't think.
Not tomorrow. Yeah,
Not quite tomorrow.
You'll be on the betaing it very shortly, sir.
How about yourself, Dan?
Custom search and extraction, which is, again, I'm sure an oft-heard, repeated thing, much like schema. And so I make it a point to bring it up to Gareth and Patrick whenever I have to.
Yeah, Dan, just on that, what is your main sort of purpose for content? I guess custom extraction in particular. What are you doing with it?
So there's a lot of, like, I like both of those things because they're very like Swiss Army knife utility tools, right? And you can use them for lots of things. But like a common example with extraction is in terms of checking changes over time is making sure like core, like if you have keywords or content sections that have specific HTML elements, it's like a good example to make sure that those don't change or break, or other stuff like that. Tagging, right? Making sure tags in the HTML stay, all kinds of stuff that kind of dovetail with your like monitoring stuff. And then there's like the one-off content crawl kind of like get site intelligence to do strategy stuff, which I think it's very valuable for.
I have a classic one example of that as well. Quite a few years ago now, when I worked for a financial company, we had to search 127 websites for the instances where they'd mentioned FSA, because it changed to the two different bodies, and they had to go. The business people had to go in, and they didn't have time to go and look at every single page in every site. So we did a crawl and found them all, and then they could go in and actually change those to the two new bodies. Did that quite quickly as well, despite not having Sitebulb at the time.
Yeah, so we actually do that. We have a tool that does posting to some client sites that use a content management system. And so if there's like something that needs to get changed and scaled in terms of like copy, we have to use another crawler now to go through, hundreds of sites and look at hundreds of URLs to pull all the instances of that copy that needs to be changed. And I'd rather just use one tool personally.
Mm-hmm. Well, that one also is coming soon. Sorry.
Those things aren't really sort of SEO jobs, but they're content. And I've found over the years that people always come to the SEOs and say, you know what you're doing. Can you find this one?
Mm-hmm.
Well, in some instances, you're responsible for the copy too, right? So you really do have to find it because like you have to rewrite it, right? Like,
actually, the custom extraction is, to some extent, for me and Gareth, is like something which we ideologically fought against for a while, because we were like, well, you're kind of not really doing a site audit when you're doing those sorts of things, and we're building a site audit tool, and like that's helped us in some ways to kind of define what the thing is, but in so many other ways the people doing site audits are already doing this other stuff. And like you say, Dan, it just dovetails in so nicely. If you're already crawling the site in the first place, you might as well already look for this stuff. So we've eventually relented, and it's I guess 95% plus ready, Gareth.
Yep,
like
not
that.
far away.
Again, we'll be ready for beta very soon.
So there is one other thing I'd like to see as well, and you kind of touched on it.
Hang on a minute. One thing.
And the graphing. This is way off though, but I'd like to be able to get more reports out. Now we've got the scheduling. I kind of use Sitebulb in three ways. One, quick look for a quote. I'll bang it on the site to see what's in there. The second one is a full audit, etc. And the third is now monitoring. And I would like to just have some dashboard, maybe in Google Data Studio, that I can just look at every morning. The crawls are run overnight, and I go, right, what's gone wrong, or what, I do something like that. So that kind of instant reporting and let me know what's going on when you're monitoring is, I think, going to be critical in the future as well. So sorry, that was the second one, but there you go.
That was actually a question, unfortunately, we didn't get time for that. Well, it wasn't so much a question, a discussion point of just where auditing becomes monitoring and what that means and how we address that. So yeah, I think we could do a whole another session on that.
We've got time to let Dan have another feature request, because I feel a bit unfair signing over two.
Yeah, so we mainly use Sitebulb for the like kind of crawling capabilities and the rendering agent and all of the post processing. And so it's been a bit since y'all have pushed some like new post processing reports. And so rather than like a single feature, I would love you guys to like be adding to those like on the reg, right? Because that's the stuff that is like the real time saver at like every crawl. Any report that can be kind of surfaced out with the data is like, oh, it's just so good when you don't have to do it yourself, right?
Yep. Any in particular that you think need a facelift?
I can give you some product feedback if you want to. Absolutely. Yeah.
Always.
Yeah, let me take some screenshots and stuff because it's a little, UI and stuff, a little more nuanced.
Yeah, if you send it to me, then I can just forward it straight to Gareth as like a to-do. Yeah.
I can like CC him and just be like, hey, this is going to be coming down from Patrick soon, so I want you to be seeing this.
Yeah, don't CC him.
That actually takes me on to, we're going to tie it up now, but that was one of the things I had noted down to ask people if you've got feedback about any of the new features or anything existing, please let us know. Any bugs as well, make sure you tell us. We rely on you to let us know when things are going wrong because we're not using it all the time like you are. So thank you for everyone that's joined us. We seem to got a fairly small, intimate audience. We didn't promote it very wide, but people seem to have stuck with us until now. So hopefully we've done okay. And a massive thanks to Simon and Dan for joining us. I hope you've maybe enjoyed it, even, possibly.
Well, mostly.
Yeah. We'll pay you later.
Thank you.
And beyond that, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone that's joined us, and please subscribe to the channel so we can claim our nice URL. We don't have this horrible one. And hopefully we'll be doing this again shortly. So
Thank you, everybody.
Geoff.
cheers.
Cheers.
Goodbye all.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.